I'm Hank Dittmar, and my job really is to talk about where we're going with the lean urbanism. And I think that, and as Andres said, it's both a project and a movement. Brian is managing a lot of people, many of whom are in the room and have volunteered an awful lot of time for this. And so what you'll be seeing is a fragment of that today. I'm going to talk about the framework in which we'll be working in the next 2 years through pilot projects and tools, and then following the structure of the charter and of subsidiarity. Lysistrata is going to talk about municipal actions. Sandy is going to talk about a neighborhood tool, and John is going to talk about a tool that's made available at the building scale. And so while we're used to thinking about the region and the three scales of the transect, these are really the scales of the lean urbanism. It's the municipal scale, it's the neighborhood and community scale, or the corridor, and it's the builder or the nonprofit or the individual entrepreneur that are the actors in the lean urbanism. So we're stepping right down here, and I think that's important. I wanted to talk about my own aha moments, because I didn't go on the tour with Andreas, but I came to a similar conclusion. And this is what we also find, is that we have different journeys where we arrive at the same point. I've been, for many years, working in Rosetown in Kingston, Jamaica, to heal a community that's really been torn apart by gang violence. And that began with a charrette by DPZ and the foundation, where a master plan for sort of rebuilding the community and rebuilding the houses in the community was put together. But what we actually discovered was that the master plan couldn't be implemented until people stopped shooting one another, until the barricades were taken out of the streets, and until the community developed a level of self-governance where they decided what they wanted and could effectively represent that to one another. And it involved training, it involved starting small business, and now, after 8 years, we're actually getting to the point where some of those things are happening. And this is a project that we did with the Rosetown Benevolent Society, the community group, to create a workshop for masonry and carpentry to repair the houses in the community. Because when we came, they said, when is the prince going to build me my house? I was working for the Prince's Foundation. And we said, no, actually, you're going to either rebuild your own house or you're going to hire young people in the community to rebuild your house. We'll help you get title to your house. And that began to get me thinking about lean. But this was what the community came up with as the rules that guided the activities within the masonry place. And I could contrast that to any construction site in the UK or the US, where it would be about hard hats, high visibility vests, steel-toed boots, and a distance away from machinery and masks and a whole set of other things. One positive thing that happened the day before and one challenge to overcome. The recitation of the mission statement, a commitment statement prepared the day before that speaks to what will be achieved today on the production front. Any idea that needs to be captured. So every day, all the young people go through that ritual, which is about accomplishing something in the near term. And then we probably aren't going to be able to use this code of conduct here in the CNU. No smoking of any kind, no alcohol consumption, no bad word cursing, no fighting. And we hope we can treat each team member with respect, at least. We do that. But it's a different context in Jamaica. And so that's one driver for me. The second driver is more of a system driver. And I've been working around the world in the last decade. And it seems to me there are a number of substantial changes that are happening with our economy, with our demographics, and with the world that people are being born into over and over again. And Robert Adam, who's in the front row, has done some amazing work in England about tomorrow's home that looks into a lot of these same features. But more and more of us don't have careers or even full-time jobs. We're freelancing, we're part-time working, we're working from home. More and more, as we heard from Chris Leinberger's amazing charts, where there are preferences for walkable, more urban places. And if you go through age cohorts, those numbers increase as you get younger. Housing and transportation costs are driving migration out of successful metros into other metros where costs are more affordable. And mobile telephones and accessibility are creating platforms which enable information to be shared by individuals and are moving the power and the decision-making from a sort of regular, predictable basis to a real-time and distributed basis. And this is going to make planning of the long-range kind that we all were taught to do, where we forecast the daily commute based on the fact that everybody's going to IBM, very much more volatile. And I think we're really going to start to see that in coming years. And all this volatility, to me, suggests a place for small-scale, incremental approaches that, A, reduce the risk of large capital approaches and of volatility in the economy, but that also incrementally build place-based wealth and enterprise and platforms for that wealth to be shared among people who live in communities. So those are, I think, substantial drivers for change that are not different from those that Andres pointed out, but they're a different window into what's going on. And this was an interesting chart that a marketing firm did, which looks at growth in metro areas, population change in metro areas with better job growth, and less affordable metros, the San Franciscos and the Austins, were, from 2000 to 2006, before the recession, just growing a little bit faster than the more affordable ones. But since 2006, that trend has reversed. And what we're seeing are the places with affordable housing. We're seeing people moving back into the places where they grew up, reoccupying their communities, making commitments, and making a difference. And I think you can see this in the statistics, but you can certainly hear it anecdotally in lots of places, from Nashville to Oklahoma City to Fayetteville to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so I think that is territory for lean. It's a place where lean can actually begin to grow. And so cities and towns that face a volatile, dynamic, real-time future, where predict and provide, the old model of planning, is no longer reliable, and the old supply and demand planning is inappropriate. We'll see an incremental world, but yet we have substantial barriers to entry for small-scale incremental development and revitalization, which make incrementalism unlikely without an effort to do something about it. It would be great if a project of 20 homes had 2% of the brain damage of a project of 2,000 homes, but it probably has 80% of the brain damage. And so that's wrong, and it means that that added cost and burden and process makes those projects not feasible often. So we need concerted action to remove barriers and create new tools. Hence, the papers have led to an identification of the issues, and what we want to do now is move to actually working in real communities to develop and deploy tools and methodologies to begin to address these tools. And so the part of the project that I'm really focusing on is the pilot projects. As Brian said, we aim to make incremental development possible in targeted areas, and they will serve as a test bed for the Lean Toolkit. 5 pilot projects will be undertaken, at least 2 in Knight communities. And this is a map from the website of Knight, Long Beach, San Jose, I can't remember where in Colorado, communities, a lot of communities in the southeast, a lot of communities in the Midwest. And the blue dots are the ones where Knight has resident managers. And so we'll be meeting with the Knight Foundation and their resident managers to identify likely candidates for lean pilot projects for at least two of the 5 pilot projects. And while we have gotten generous support from the Knight Foundation and the Kresge Foundation, we'll have to raise additional funding for the pilot projects, which we aim to do as they're identified. But because I believe that free advice is ignored freely, we will ask for a local matching commitment from the communities that are taking part. There needs to be people, local communities, both the business community and the local government need to have skin in the game so that they will be, and one way of showing that is by making an investment. So, as Brian said, there are 3 stages of a pilot project. The first is the lean scan, which is a new tool that I've been working on, and there's a paper on the website that describes the tool. And it will be trialed in the first pilot project and then developed further. An action plan workshop and an implementation stage. Unlike a typical charrette, a lean scan is about identifying opportunities, talent, and barriers. So it's not a typical charrette where we engage a wide variety of stakeholders on the creation of a master plan. It's an opportunistic effort to identify an area where the marketplace, the real estate marketplace, is at a place where lean, small-scale development can be viable, where to identify a talent pool of small-scale developers or would-be developers, to identify the potential sources of both equity and lending, and to look at the barriers, most importantly, the problems that people have had in the past, so that we can build a toolkit for that region which addresses those barriers. So what we're trying to do is to narrow the field of investigation to short-term improvements in development. It's a shift from the master plan and the large-scale developer to opportunities. And that's really important, I think, because we're all trained to try, as Andres said, to create the successional state and to create the beautiful plan. And really, we're looking to create the good urban box on a couple of plots that will encourage the next developer to come along and do the same thing. So we're trying to get the ball rolling rather than to build the thing out. In each region, I think, and it was interesting, I was visiting friends and colleagues in Oklahoma City just before this, and I posed to a group of developers there this question, which said, well, you all are working in this area and you're being very successful. Would you be threatened if we trebled or quadrupled or increased the number of people working in this area by 10 times? And they said, no, actually, there's so much to do here. There's so much to do that we need lots of people working at this scale. And so our aim is to build a talent pool of small-scale, for-profit, and importantly, not-for-profit community developers. The next stage would be the action plan workshop, which is actually the development of a list of 1 to 5 year incremental strategies. Following a month or so, or 2 months after the lean scan, it will develop the tools and the protocols and thresholds for planning and entitlement, lean buildings, infrastructure, and finance. And I guess what I would say here is that rather than changing zoning codes, what we're trying to do is to find workarounds. We're trying to find thresholds within building and zoning where things can get done, daylight those, and create building types and infrastructure types that can be permitted more easily. And to target them as near-term opportunities. Each pilot project will establish what Andres talked about, a pink zone with light and red tape as the locus for implementation of lean strategies and improvements. So we might begin with a larger area and zero down to an area where we do something. And that might be an overlay zoning, it might be a planned unit development area, a broad one where small-scale development is permitted by right, certain types of it, or it might be an area where someone is appointed to oversee to oversee the work with other people. This is not the same as a pink zone. There's been a lot of confusion about what we're proposing, and this is not what we're proposing, although if a community comes up with it, we'll have to decide whether, because it is a bottom-up process. So to speak. That was for you, John. I'm always being your straight man. Implementation, I think, is the next phase, and we aim to stay in place for a year to 18 months, mentoring and training local developers, appointing a project coordinator to work with the community, and providing encouragement. And I would say a concept that we've been grappling with is the idea that in each of these areas there needs to be a platform for revitalization. And there probably, as Andres talked about associations, there probably needs to be an association. It might be a business improvement district, it might be a community development corporation, a homeowners association, or a benefit corps. But it's the vehicle for assembling key properties that might remain in the public or nonprofit ownership, the vehicle for perhaps crowdfunding street improvements, and the vehicle for ensuring that benefit accrues back to the community for the benefit of both the developers and the people who live around the new development. And so this is, I think, a tool or a piece of the project that we'll be working on that'll have broad impact. The Lean Toolkit develops a series of tools across a number of areas. Lean building, and we hear a lot of interest in this. It's a set of building types which, and John will talk about them in some detail, which can be built with, and hopefully can be pre-approved with the building officers and the fire marshals that are modest in scale, easy to develop, and by a competent small developer or a startup developer. It includes lean rehab and thinking through how to do rehab of existing buildings more cost effectively, and lean mixed use. Lean development includes lean finance, and there's a good paper about non-traditional finance on our website at this point. Incremental development, and a tool that we're hoping to create called the Developer in a Box, which is essentially the set of protocols and spreadsheets and other things that you need to have if you're a neophyte developer and you want to move from 0 to 20, because if we go faster than 20, we kill pedestrians in a short period of time. Lean business is, I think, really about, and we're still debating what lean business is a bit, but it's really about beginning to think about how to encourage low-cost platforms for startup and business hubs. Lean regulation, Sandy's going to talk a bit about that, but it's making the most of workarounds, threshold, and hacks, and it incorporates the pink zone or the lean PUD. And lean infrastructure, Paul Crabtree's been taking a lead on that with light impact and low impact streets, drainage, and utilities, and also the idea in some areas of decentralized and neighborhood scaled utilities, which may be more expensive on a per capita basis, but achievable on a small scale basis where something bigger is not. And lean education is beginning to deal with the question of how do you train the developers, how do you train the craftspeople, and is there a better route to getting in this profession of lean and new urbanism than the ones we already have?
I forgot lean green.
Oh, lean green, yes. Thank you. Well, lean green is Doug Kelbaugh's written a paper which outlines a series of principles for lean approaches to green, and we'll be, I think, drawing on that in terms of creating tools for evaluating neighborhoods and buildings. But essentially, it's passive, low-tech approaches to green building and infrastructure, and it's not relying on certification programs that have been subjected to regulatory capture by equipment manufacturers, such as regulatory capture is an important driver for lean, we think. And I'll just say, I think that part of what we're dealing with bureaucracy is the fact that large corporations and large suppliers are able to, through standard setting organizations and through lobbying, to make the rules work for them, and they don't work for anybody else. And so, and this is a broader societal problem than simply an urbanism problem, but it's one that we're trying to address at the incremental scale. John will talk about this, but I didn't have very many pictures, so I stole one of his. I'm interested in hearing from folks, and Brian is too, about ideas for successful project sites. So I'll spend a quick second talking about pilot projects. A successful site would be one, I think, where land and housing are relatively affordable. If land values have already reached to the point because of zoning that people think that they can get 30-story buildings, we ain't doing lean there. And so it needs to be places where developer or speculator action is not already concentrated. A second criteria is that municipal leadership, and not necessarily everyone within the municipality, but municipal leadership supports reducing process burdens for small enterprise and development. That there is an engaged base of local support among developers, businesses, and organizations such as community nonprofits. That the region or the city is willing to tap in to the energy of immigrants, millennials, makers, and downshifting baby boomers, sees diversity as an asset. And finally, recognizes that empty buildings, older neighborhoods, and declining strip malls and shopping centers can be assets when creativity and incrementalism are applied. I loved Chris Leinberger's talk about walk-ups, but I got really worried when I saw his picture from the cover of The Economist of all those skyscrapers surrounding the little historic building. And I think a lot of what this is about is neighborhood preservation and modest re-intensification to make up for the loss of density that happened in the late 20th century. So we're looking for the places where we can rebuild infrastructure that was once there, or rebuild infrastructure that never worked, such as shopping centers and strip malls. So we'll select the pilot projects. We'll engage in a dialogue with potential cities. We're not going to do a formal call for projects. We're going to engage. So reach out to Brian or Andres or myself. If we know people there, it's probably easier for us. And we'll narrow the choice to 5 to 7 pilot sites. We'll have a formal brief proposal that expresses interest, and it'll be pretty simple, and I'll be developing that in the next couple of weeks. So just to summarize, lean urbanism is focused on infill development and reuse in post-industrial cities or post-sprawl cities, the repair of sprawling suburbs. Lean urbanism taps underutilized physical, social, economic, and human assets for community benefit and added value. And we work primarily at the scale of the building, the street, and the neighborhood. And lean means fit and healthy. And it doesn't mean obese, and it doesn't mean that we're starving. It means, it means that we're providing people the means to make stronger and better lives. So, thanks.